All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 4 of The Gaming Grifter. In today's episode, we have a bit of a slower news day. It's not completely dead, just to be fair, but there's not as many big stories coming out, and I do think that that's going to be sort of par for the course for the rest of December. Most, I think, of the companies right now is probably taking a bit of a break, or at least just desperately trying not to get into the news because, obviously people are going into the holidays now and there's not much happening. So I'm assuming we're going to get probably big bombshells in January again as the gaming industry continues to melt down, because that just seems to be what is happening now. There is obviously always good news in all of this. For example, Path of Exile 2 has been absolutely smashing it. I made a video on my thoughts there. I'm probably gonna make another video about that now that I've played it a little bit more, put a little bit more hours into it, and I'm deep into Act 2 at the moment. I think I can speak now a lot more clearly about the successes as well as the failures of Path of Exile 2. There aren't many failures. Let me just put it that way. It does what it needs to do, at least in my opinion, relatively well. Today's episode is gonna feature some, I think, harder topics. There's lawsuits going on. There's a whole porn situation that we probably need to talk about just a little bit. Sweet Baby Inc. appears to just be in an absolute panic. And then, of course, as far as I'm concerned, first story for the day is a story that I'm kind of revisiting. So this is something that's been out there for a while, and originally I made a video on this, and I just sort of poked fun at Rod Ferguson because it sounds funny. The tweet in question is, of course, feels like the genre of ARPGs is starting to mean a lot of different things. Much like Souls-like and roguelike, I wonder if we could normalize Diablo-like for ARPGs that follow the Diablo formula. Now, originally, I just rate this, and I think most people just rate this as the Diablo 4 devs are really worried. They're worried about the hype that is going to be Path of Exile, and this tweet, by the way, came literally right after the big reveal of Path of Exile. So when the people from Triple G came out and showed everything that's coming in the original, in the early access, this is when this tweet surfaced. And we all just sort of made fun of Rod Ferguson. But I think this tweet has been bothering me for a while. And I've been thinking about it sort of passively since I really covered it. So it's been about 2 weeks. And yes, sometimes I get that anal about stuff where I just can't let something go when it sticks with me, when I don't know how to get, like, for some reason, it just keeps eating at me. And yesterday, my brother asked me if I saw this tweet. And he had an interesting little bit of insight. And as soon as he said it, I was like, wow, that's what's been bothering me. So, reading this tweet in, I believe, the spirit that it was actually written in, suggests that Rod Ferguson and the gang, the guys over at Diablo 4 in Blizzard, they don't think that Path of Exile 2 is a Diablo-like. They don't believe that it should have the right to play in the same space and genre as Diablo. Now, to be clear, the genre of ARPG is a bit of a weird one, because technically Elden Ring is an ARPG. Technically, you could even call Cyberpunk an action RPG, because it's got action, it's action combat for the most part, and it's an RPG. So technically speaking, he's not wrong in that ARPGs do mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, but in the same vein, Elden Ring can also be described as an action-adventure game. Cyberpunk can also be described as an action-adventure game. No one is going to call Diablo 4 an action-adventure game. But you should also not call it an RPG, because it really isn't an RPG, not in the true sense of the word, but that's a whole different, ball game and a whole different discussion that I won't bore you guys with right now. It just smacks of, and you'll see that this is sort of a topic that we will be revisiting in a future story, but this just screams, we don't know what we're doing. We at Blizzard have no idea what games are or how to compare games to one another. The fact that old Rod here thinks that Diablo 4 would be called a Diablo-like, but Path of Exile wouldn't be a Diablo-like, and you can make the argument, sure, that this might not be related to Path of Exile 2, but everyone in the comments clearly understood what this was in relation to. You go through the comments and it's very clear. Everyone knew exactly what he was referring to and what he was talking about. If you ask me, in my honest opinion, which of the two, Diablo 4 or Path of Exile 2, would qualify as a Diablo-like, I would say Path of Exile 2 is far more Diablo-like. Because remember, if you're going to say Diablo-like, you can't start Diablo-like in Diablo 4 being the foundation of that. If you're going to say games are Diablo-like, it's going to be Diablo 1 and 2 that forms the foundation of what is referred to as a Diablo-like. Do you think Path of Exile is more Diablo-like when comparing it to Diablo 1 and 2? Or do you think Diablo 4 is more Diablo-like when you compare it to Diablo 1 and 2? Because I would say that Diablo 4 is a watered-down, mobilized version of Diablo 1 and 2. It's commercialized. The whole point of Diablo 1 and 2 was always that it's sort of fringe, you know. It really, shall we say, benefits the autistic gamer out there that will spend an obscene amount of hours going back and forth between, oh, do I do this instead? Do I do this instead? What build will be the best for me? Diablo 1 and 2 really incentivized that sort of playstyle. Maybe not 1 as much, but 2 definitely did. Diablo 4 doesn't incentivize that playstyle. If anything, in Diablo 4, you get a build, and most of the time the build has one button. You push that one button and everything gets deleted, and all of the other buttons really just, it's kind of there for whatever, right? That's really how it works. Path of Exile, I would say, far more depth, far more sort of degenerate autistic gamer. So yeah, it just, I think it speaks to a larger problem within the gaming industry. Lady, how you doing? American Native, how you doing? It speaks to a larger problem, I think, within the gaming industry at large, where a lot of the developers, and again, you'll see, we have a story that we're going to be covering later about Assassin's Creed Shadows. I think the problem is that a lot of the developers that work on our video games now genuinely appear to not actually play the video games that they make. They appear to be people who make games based on what they've been told to make from the research departments. So the market research guys told them, hey guys, ARPGs is in now. Just look at Lost Ark, look at all of these other games. We need an ARPG. And then they put a team together and they say, right, you can do graphics, you'll make the graphics for our ARPG. And it feels as if most of the people working on this Diablo specifically have no idea. And I can actually prove this a little bit. Well, not prove it, but I can provide evidence, I think, of this. If we go into the seasons of Diablo 4, I mentioned this after the first ever big patch changes, where the patch completely broke the game. So many things, like so many spells and so many changes were completely unbalanced, completely broken, to the point that even before the patch went live, just during the campfire discussion of the patch, all of the content creators making videos about Diablo 4 were looking at the changes going, dude, what the hell are you guys doing? Like, this is never going to work. You know, people who actually play the game can look at the changes and go, wait, these changes make no sense. Why are you making these changes? This is going to break the game. And then, surprise, surprise, it absolutely broke the game. And then Blizzard sort of instantly responds, and within a week they release another update that sort of reverts a lot of the changes and does the things that all of the videos now told them to do, because obviously there's a bunch of Diablo content creators out there that know what they're doing because they play the game every single day of their lives. And so based on that feedback, Blizzard then made sweeping changes and finally fixed the game. Now, sure, that does speak to a company that is really listening to their player base, but you have to ask yourself, how did you get there in the first place? Like, how did it get that bad that you needed to listen to the player base in that way? If you guys actually played the game, then surely you would know that those changes were going to break the game, and it's not a good idea. This is this tweet. In a nutshell, this tweet speaks to that. A developer, specifically a lead developer, that can't even tell that his own game would not be called a Diablo-like under his own definition. Because Diablo 4 isn't the evolution of Diablo 1 and 2. Diablo 4 is the commercialization of Diablo 1 and 2. Path of Exile 1 would be what we would call the evolution of Diablo 1 and 2, and then Path of Exile 2 would be the evolution of Path of Exile 1. So clearly, one of those games is far more Diablo-like than the others. And I would say the same thing about Diablo 3. One of the key criticisms of Diablo 3 was the fact that it wasn't a Diablo game. It didn't play like a Diablo game. It didn't feel like a Diablo game. And Diablo 4, I would say, in terms of gameplay, in terms of freedom of choice, in terms of the ability to be autistic, is basically slightly deeper than Diablo 3, but still as shallow as a puddle. There really still isn't much that you can do in Diablo 4 in terms of like unique builds that you can come up with. So yeah, I would argue, you know, I wanted to cover this because it is a growing problem for me within the gaming industry. Just developers that clearly don't know what the hell they're doing, especially being at the lead of these companies. But I'll pass it on to you guys in the comment section to let me know what you think, and you guys in chat that's watching live. Okay, so Lady, how you doing? American Native, how you doing? Ravy G, how you doing? Hadwell, how you doing, bro? I don't understand how someone who doesn't like games and gamer culture learns how to code and make games. It seems a lot of developers use games as a soapbox they can stand on. I genuinely think the biggest problem isn't so much the fact that they don't like games. I think the biggest problem is the fact that the game development has become romanticized to the point where a lot of people think it's easy. I think that's the biggest problem. I think there's a lot of developers that go into game design thinking, well, how hard can it be? I get paid to make video games? Like, dude, come on. Not realizing that to be a video game developer, you have to be an avid gamer first and foremost. So you have to play a lot of games. There's a reason why Yoshi P, for example, encourages the entire team of Final Fantasy XIV to play as many games as possible. Right? He's not doing that because he sort of feels like it. He's doing that because it's required. The developers on his team has to know how to make video games, and you learn how to make video games by playing video games, because you need to figure out what the trends are. If you follow Path of Exile 2 and you listen to the lead developer on Path of Exile 2, he actually explained this in an interview. They looked at all of the current offerings in the gaming space, in the ARPG space specifically, and they said, right, we need to rise to that level. So we need to try and make the game better than what anyone else is offering, but we have to at least be able to meet that level. If we can't meet that level, we're in trouble. That is how you make games. Now, how do you know what the current level is for ARPGs? You play them, right? You have to play those games pretty hardcore in order to understand all of the ins and outs and what does the game offer and what doesn't the game offer. And then you learn things. So, for example, as a YouTuber, one of the best ways to learn how to be a YouTuber is to watch other YouTubers. You watch how they present themselves, how they handle themselves, the way the lighting is set up, the way they do thumbnails, the way they do titles. All of these things serve as inspiration for you to do your own thing. But you can only do that if you are actually paying attention. And I fear we have a bunch of game developers who do not pay attention. Remember when they had the maps flipped in the reveal video for Diablo Immortal? Everything about Immortal, including the outside of the game presentation, was so sloppy. True. You don't know if something is bad until you've tried something better than it. True, Hatwell. Acedia, how you doing? All right, so our next story for the day is, well, I don't know how to put it. Is it good news? Is it bad news? Is it whatever news? At this point, when it comes to the games media, I am a little bit torn. Now, I've read through the whole article here. It's a bit of a mess. Ziv Davis is a name that I've covered before. I made an entire video about this. This company is a highly questionable because when you look at Ziv Davis, they own pretty much like 50% of all of the mainstream media outlets for gaming. But then they also seem to have subsidiaries of other companies or stocks in other companies that own the other half. So Ziv Davis is a big player within the mainstream media gaming space. It's kind of weird. But anyways, there's some bad things happening. So apparently in an email, organic revenue is down by about 10% since 2021. What does this mean? Well, it means that traditional media is dying. They are incapable. Now, already in 2021, these media companies were suffering. They were already struggling. We had the first layoffs in gaming media started all the way back, I believe, in 2018, where we started seeing them sort of downsize and try new things. It was, I think, 2019 when we started to see all of these gaming sites go into movies and series and basically everything culture, trying to grow their base. And none of that has worked. And it hasn't worked for a reason. Websites are dead. People come to YouTube for news. People come to YouTube for culture. Why would I go read an article when I could just watch a YouTuber tell me what's in the article in the first place, right? So it makes it a hell of a lot easier. But fundamentally, Ziv Davis have now announced that more layoffs will come. What's interesting, though, is that a lot of these companies don't have much more people to lay off. So games industry, for example, has been completely gutted. You can go through the article, but games industry themselves have been smashed as a result of these layoffs. And the article obviously tries to sort of paint this as, oh, this is the saddest day in the history of the world. I don't necessarily believe that this is a sad day, because I don't think the media does the job that they're supposed to do, the job that we need the games media for. And it is important that you understand this. I don't believe that games media is a bad thing generally. In concept, I think you need games media. There is a role and a function that they serve that I, as a YouTuber, will find very difficult to serve. Because if I want to do their job, and I mean the job that they're supposed to do, I would have to get actual journalists, actual investigative journalists on the payroll. I would have to be able to pay for them to fly out to different countries and stay in hotels there as they research and find dirt on the gaming companies and find all the sort of bits and bobs and pieces. I would have to be able to pay for them to take people to dinner, to try and form relationships and form contacts within the industry. So I would need hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in order to build an entire team that can then do exposés and find information and so on and so forth, just so that I can do the job that the media does. Since the media already is supposed to do that, they're geared towards it, right? They should be doing that. The problem is they don't do that. Not really anymore. when you go through most of the media sites today, the articles that they cover, I mean, you can go through Kotaku, for example, and you can look at Kotaku's website. There's no real journalism there. Like, let me just quickly show you. There's no real journalism on their site. It's fluff pieces. It's them sort of going, oh, this game came out. Here's things I love and hate about it. This thing came out, and this thing came out. There's no news. It's just reporting on things that is happening on Twitter, effectively. You know, that's it. That's their entire thing. And that's not really why we need them. We need them to expose the gaming industry. But if you go through Kotaku, you will find very quickly they expose nothing. Kotaku hasn't exposed anything since Jason Schreier left. And Jason Schreier went to go work at Forbes. And the reason he went to go work at Forbes is Kotaku is going under. And exposés take time. They're very, very long-winded processes. And once they're finished, you get the big payoff at the end. But since the readership of these companies have fallen to the point where no one even cares, we have real problems, right? With exposés and with news. So I think that the media is important, but I do also think that we have way too many media sites out there. You have basically, guys, you have Kotaku, you have PC Gamer, you have Game Industry Biz, and if you go through every single one of their websites, they look exactly the same. Like, exactly the same. They cover exactly the same news. We all saw the Veilguard article where they even had the exact same lines. Dragon Age the Veilguard is a return to form for BioWare. That's sort of their thing, you know. That's what they have. That's what they do. And it sort of feels a bit manufactured. So there's no reason for you to want to go to one over the other. There's no reason for you to say, well, actually, when it comes to Kotaku, I really prefer their exposés, but when I want just sort of daily news driver, I go to PC Gamer. No, you just get the same thing at both of them. I think if the gaming media is to survive, they first need to get rid of all their ideological nonsense. They need to get rid of all these journalists that aren't journalists but pretend to be journalists. And they have to get the old guys back, the Jason Schreiers, the actual investigative journalists, but then maybe conglomerate the things. So take a lot of these media companies and pull them into a single company where you maybe have like 5 or 6 ordinary daily writers and then maybe 5 or 6 actual expose writers that can go out and can find the stories, can find the scoop, as it were, on everything that happens within the gaming industry. But this is just, it's an untenable situation, and we're going to see more layoffs happen. For now, the layoffs have already gutted companies that don't really have much to be gutted with. Like games industry already had most of their, I think 60% of the entire games industry staff was let go over the last 3 years. Now there's even more layoffs, which means of the remaining 30%, there's even more people going away. And Ziv Davis did this sort of weird thing where they didn't fire them and they didn't lay them off. What they did was they kind of gave them an ultimatum. You can leave now or we can fire you later. That was basically the choice that they were given. Leave now or we fire you later. It's like, oh, well, what the hell am I doing here? You know, what are we even playing at? And they're struggling to make money, but they don't understand why they're struggling to make money. Because if you were to ask Kotaku or PC Gamer or IGN, why are you guys struggling to make money? They wouldn't know. They would probably tell you, oh, it's just the medium is dying. The medium is dying, but the medium is dying because of you. Because you all gave Dragon Age the Veilguard 8 out of 10s, 9 out of 10s, and 10 out of 10s. You're the reason your medium is dying. Because when I go to your websites, I don't know if I can trust what you're saying. Which is why normally when I cover any of their stories, I don't just use their websites. I have to go look for other information as well, because I don't know what the truth is anymore, because you guys don't ever tell the truth. And that's why people have left. That's why people have come to YouTubers, because at least with YouTubers, there's the ability to hold YouTubers individually accountable for the work that they do. And if a YouTuber does lie to you, you, the viewer, should absolutely punish that YouTuber. Absolutely should punish that YouTuber. And what's nice is you often do. And as YouTubers, we can't escape that because it's public. I can see your comments. So if I say something that is false, that is wrong, I'll see the comments of people calling me out on it. The media, obviously, they don't allow that. They don't have that. Their bubble is bursting, and it's bursting in the worst possible way, because it's done against their will. They didn't choose to step outside their bubble. They're going to be forced to do so. Oh well. Waifu, how you doing? The exposed media is now covered by random YouTubers. Cedia, yes. Machete, how you doing, bro? It's just ads with a couple of sentences in between. True. I would say, though, very few YouTubers actually... It's not possible for us to do breaking news, right? What I do more is, but I think there's a value in it, is you cover the news and then you provide commentary on it. And your viewers obviously come because they want that commentary. I don't think anyone really comes to my channel for the news. Because if you wanted just the news, you could literally just open Twitter and see for yourself. People come for the commentary. And there's value to that. But it's not really news. It's commentary on the news. We still need the media to do the news. But the problem is the media doesn't do the news. So what the hell are we supposed to do? Cedia, that is very true. That is very true. They've Michael, how you doing, brother? They have put themselves in a position where it is very difficult to trust them. And I wouldn't be surprised if almost no one has any interest in trusting them. Like, when the media says anything, there's this sort of growing fear that believing them would almost certainly mean you're wrong about whatever. There's this famous quote that said, if you watch the news, if you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you read the newspaper, you're misinformed. And I feel like that's just become like times 20. That's just blown up times 20. It's gotten worse, not better. I need to learn to start time for this. The start time for these, Michael. There's no official start time for these, and the reason for it is I first get all of the news ready. So start time is kind of dependent on once all the news stories is ready. So that's why I don't have like an official time that I start. I start when I start. Yeah, otherwise it would be a mess. It would be an absolute mess. And also I do most of this right after gym. So I have about 2 hours usually that I quickly read through luckily, because I do so much reading about the gaming news, I have so much information that as soon as I read an article, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember. So I don't have to do all of that research every single time. But some days, like for example, yesterday, I think we started a bit later because I was actually finishing some research and stuff. So sometimes they will be later, sometimes they will be earlier. It really all depends. You know what's effed up? When I was a kid, like 20 some years ago, tabloid papers were made fun of as being full of lies and hyperbolic shit. And now that's just the current mainstream news. True. They can't get their foot in the door with YouTube because a video version of an IGN article is still an IGN article. And well, that is very, very true. That is very, very true. However, you know what isn't an IGN article? I just, I I don't know. I don't know how to break this story. Because they're not really... It's just a bit of fun. Okay? It's just a bit of fun. And every once in a while, I think it is important for us to have a bit of fun. It's important for us to sort of embrace the funny side of the gaming industry and just how broken this industry really is. For those of you that were wondering what Veilguard is up to, Veilguard is now 35% off on Steam. And I'll remind you that Veilguard isn't even a month old. Or it's just over a month old, I think, at this point. That's not good. Most games, will take usually almost a year before you start seeing the first real discounts go out on the game. Now, we, of course, have some insider information that depends on how trustworthy the sources are. I'm not suggesting that Smash JT would ever lie, but sources can be a tricky thing. He does claim that they are verified. But according to this insider source, the game sold over 3 million copies as of yesterday or the day before yesterday. Over 3 million copies. According, however, to this insider, that's not even close than what would have been required for them to make their money back. So they were hoping, they were sort of shooting for 10 million copies in the first month of the game going live. They're way off of that. Way off of that. Now, there is a thing here that I'm not entirely sure how much of this will impact things. Because the sales figures that this insider shared is the sales figures that are given to them. Now, there's something that needs to be kept in mind here. This won't be true in all countries, but I do know that it is true in South Africa because I actually know a guy that runs a gaming store. And, I mean, I've asked him, how exactly do you stock the games? And he's like, well, you buy it, and then you stock it. And then you hope people buy it. Do you guys get what I'm saying? So in other words, part of that 3 million copies sold could be sold through to stores. So in other words, it is the stores that bought up most of that. If you go around the world, you will see entire shelves filled with Dragon Age the Veilguard. You go into gaming stores, they're desperately trying to get rid of this game. Because I think a lot of stores had to do exactly that. Just, you buy the copies, you display them, you really thought as a store owner, this game is going to sell. It's a Dragon Age game. Why wouldn't a Dragon Age game sell? And then it doesn't sell. But now what do? Because EA isn't going to take back the games. You bought them, right? You now have to figure out what to do with them. So it is possible that part of that 3 million number that we've heard is sold through to stores. It's not sold to anyone else. Now, the Tekla, I've heard that as well. So I've heard also, but from what I can tell, this seems to be sort of confusing. So according to one insider, the exact numbers of copies sold were 1.5 million. The 3 million number is actually the expected lifetime sales. So they have revised their all-time numbers of 10 million down to now just 3 million. They hope that the game will sell at least 3 million. But then there are other reports that suggest that no, they did sell 3 million, but that some of that 3 million, or maybe even most of that 3 million, are copies that were sold to store owners. So the store owners are basically the ones sitting on a bunch of stock that they have to hope at some point someone is willing to buy, or they just take the loss on that and, sort of move on with that. But I don't know how it works in every single country. I know that is how it works in South Africa, but it could work different everywhere else in the world, because I think it depends. In South Africa, for example, there's only one company that imports games from the rest of the world, and then that company sells the games to all of the game stores here. I can't remember their name, but I knew it once upon a time. So that's how they do it. They're the distributor. But I'm sure other distributors will have other ways of doing it. The other bit of news, insider information that we got around the Veilguard has to do with the internal culture war. And it appears, ladies and gentlemen, as if we can finally say there is a hint of an awakening. I'm not going to go so far as to say that Dragon Age or BioWare is back, or that BioWare is finally awake. But there appears to be sort of signs of an awakening. According to the insider that spoke to Smash JT, there are a lot of turmoil at the moment within the company as higher ups are starting to realize, dude, what the hell happened? They have no idea what happened to this company. They have no idea what happened to this game. From their perspective, this game was meant to sell like hotcakes, and it didn't sell. And now they're wondering, but why didn't it sell? Like, what exactly did we do wrong? Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, Akko, that is good and all, but we'll have to wait and see. And I do agree with you. We will have to wait and see. But it is at least good news for now. I'm not suggesting that they're going to arrive at the right answers first time around. In fact, I'd be very surprised if they do. But usually part of the awakening process is at least starting to ask questions, starting to look at what is happening around you and say, wait, what if I'm wrong? What if the things that we believe isn't actually the truth, right? So here is what the email said exactly. Your number of copies sold is wrong. The number the whistleblower give you is a projection with the tail, basically over the lifetime of the game with sales. It currently has less than 1.5 million sold to consumers, not retail. So that is a major disaster for us at BioWare. So that's there. Then he goes, a lot of the info you mentioned seems correct to me. There is indeed a lot of talk of layoffs. However, you can confirm with your sources, but most of the staff was reassigned to other projects within EA for the time being. I myself have also been asked to help another project, but not at BioWare. Most people are not on Bowie at the moment. If your source says otherwise, then they are not telling you the truth. What is happening here? Most of the people are not currently on BioWare. What's happening to Mass Effect 5? Because that's supposed to be the big one. We were all told that they're moving all of their developers over to Mass Effect 5. I think this is again where we get to maybe this sort of internal culture war. According to the leaker, according to the whistleblower, there is currently an internal culture war at BioWare. It appears as if some of the developers who don't like this woke nonsense are finally starting to feel a little bit more capable of speaking up. Because now they can point to Dragon Age the Veilguard and be like, did we tell you? Like, we told you this wasn't going to work. See? So it does appear, the problem of course is, and I will always go back to this, the big question is, do I think it will work? TB, no, I don't. I don't think so. Because the people who had the actual talent, the people who made the magic at BioWare, they have long since left. Casey Hudson, for example, who used to be the lead developer on, I believe, Dragon Age and Mass Effect. He's gone. You have the guy that's currently doing Exodus, who was the lead writer on the Mass Effect games. He's gone. He's made his own game now, right, with his own studio. So a lot of the, actually, I would say most of the people with the actual talent, they're no longer at BioWare. So even if you could right the ship, even if you could convince the higher ups that, hey, boys, we need to stop being woke. We need to get to a place where we're just making games that are good. The question immediately would be, what do you consider good versus what other people? And you'll see in the next story that we're about to cover about Assassin's Creed, it'll become incredibly obvious to you that most of the game developers do not know what gamers want. They have no idea how to design video games for gamers. It is confusing to them. It hurts their brains. It's a nightmare, right? But fundamentally, what can you do? You don't like gamers in the first place. Remember, I've made how many videos now of developers openly saying that gamers were a mistake, openly saying that they hate gamers. How do you make something for someone that you hate? And how do you make it actually wanting it to be good? But remember, you have to have a love for the player if you're going to make them something with love and in any sort of good way. So yeah, I feel like that's kind of where we are, sadly. Neither most of the gamers, since if you asked 100 gamers what they want, you would get 100 different answers. Shadiest, but that is by definition normal. But also you are being hyperbolic and false. Because that is not true. You will not get 100 different answers. You might get 3 or 4 or 5 different answers, but most of the gamers will agree on one thing or another, and you will eventually come up with a majority rules kind of thing. How do we know this is true? Because there are games that actually sell well. If you were correct, and if you asked 100 different gamers what they want in a game and 100 different opinions would emerge, no game would sell more than 1 copy. Because there are 8 billion people in the world. By your definition, there are 8 billion different definitions of what is a good game, meaning any game that you make will only ever appeal to one gamer. That is just objectively false. So I get that you're trying to be hyperbolic, because I get that you are on the other side of the culture war. You don't necessarily care about the woke stuff happening in video games, but your hyperbolic stance is false. There are objectively good decisions and objectively bad decisions, and we know this because there are many developers out there who continuously make the right decisions. So clearly they understand what the gamers want, because they're gamers themselves. They know what gamers want because they move within the same circles. More interested in how to make more money, such as crates, etc., than concentrating on gameplay. I think there's very few game developers who hyper focus on the money aspect specifically. I think what's more the case nowadays is that a lot of game developers view the money-making aspect of games as just part and parcel of the game. So where in the past, you would have developers that would actively push back against more egregious monetization options, modern-day developers, so the ones that come out of college nowadays, they don't give a shit, right? They were taught games have monetization in them, and that's just how it works. And so they do it, right? When they're told by the marketing department or by the finances department, listen here, we need more monetization options, they have no problem putting those options in there because, well, that's how it works, right? Games have to have monetization. Whereas I think in the past, if you look at the earlier sort of games and their monetization, there was always a lot of sort of care taken in trying to be as unintrusive as is possible. Like, genuinely not trying to disrupt the playtime of the player with unnecessary cash purchases, which has sort of gone the way of the dodo bird. You don't do what gamers want. You listen to 100 people and analyze what they're saying, then do what's possible in the system you're working with. Tekla, you see, I do not agree with that type of game design. So the game design that you're currently, what you're referring to with your sort of scenario is development by consent or consensus. So in other words, I'm not developing a video game based on the video game that I want to develop. I'm developing a video game based on consensus. So I'm doing market research, right? So I'm going around, I'm asking 1,000 different gamers, what kind of games do you guys like? I'm getting, 50, 60% of them say, oh, we like a game like this, in this, and this, and this. And then I make that game for those players. I would argue that is ass backward. In order to make great art, and I do believe that video games is art, in order to make great art, you have to make what you love. If you're going to make something that you yourself couldn't care less about, it's going to end up looking like this. Right? Because you don't actually give a crap. Last night I was watching Carnage, and he had his final thoughts on Dragon Age the Veilguard. And he mentioned something very interesting. In the old Dragon Age games, in pretty much every RPG, the thing that keeps people there is the nerd lore. The reason RPG players play RPGs is for what he refers to as the nerd lore. So this would be the world lore. Very few people, so for example, Mass Effect. The companion quest lines and the companion interactions in Mass Effect is good. It's really fun. But what makes Mass Effect, no one is going to tell you Mass Effect was a brilliant game because of Ashley's storyline. No, Ashley's storyline may have been part of a really good game, but what made Mass Effect really good was the Reaper storyline, the overarching world storyline. Then you play Dragon Age the Veilguard, and you realize that there is almost no focus on the world, and instead all of the focus is placed on the characters, the companions. Most of the game is about your companions and their storylines, and the storylines of the world is very surface level. And unlike in previous games in the Mass Effect and Dragon Age universe, where companion questlines would oftentimes be linked to the world questline, in Dragon Age the Veilguard, they decided to make the character questlines completely separate from the main storyline. So the characters and the character arcs will be completely divorced from whatever the hell you're doing on the main stage. This is what happens when you design games by consensus. When you have a bunch of developers who clearly have never played RPGs. They don't know what an RPG really is. They don't know what makes an RPG brilliant. What is it that players want from RPGs? They just go, well, and sadly in the space of Dragon Age the Veilguard, one of the big things I think that drove this was an over sort of eagerness to be very political. So every single character every single companion within Dragon Age the Veilguard serves as the ability for one of the developers to be seen, for one of the developers to stand out. And that's sort of why it all ends up feeling very empty, very awkward, and Tasha's storyline is probably the worst and most egregious of all of them, as this sort of look at me moment. So fundamentally, I would say that is the worst way to develop games. You don't go and ask 100 gamers how they want to play a game. You do what all the old guard did. Casey Hudson and the team that worked on Mass Effect 1 and 2 didn't go around asking gamers, so boys, if you could make an RPG, what would you make? They made a game that they wanted to play. if you go back and you watch the Blizzard retroactive, it's a few years old now, but when Blizzard turned 20, they had this documentary where they spoke to some of the old guard at Blizzard, and they asked them about World of Warcraft, and they admit they had no idea that people were gonna play this game. As they were working on the game, they genuinely thought that this was gonna bomb. They had no experience making MMOs. They didn't know how to make an MMO. They played MMOs. So they played things like EverQuest, Lineage 2, those games, and they wanted a World of Warcraft. They wanted a Warcraft MMO because that's what they wanted to play. And so they just did it. And then suddenly it became the largest MMO in the world, right? And it's been dominating the MMO space ever since. And it all started from, this is what we want to make. And we're just making what we want to make, and we're hoping that there are other players that want to play what we want to make. I believe that's where good games start. I think the second you start doing things by consensus, that's when things break down and you end up with soulless video games. You end up with games that just no one really likes this because the very developers that made it in the first place doesn't even like it. So yeah, that's just my opinion, at least. Shadius, you are objectively wrong, but you're allowed to have your opinion. If you ask most people, Mass Effect 2's storyline for most people is a hell of a lot better than Mass Effect 1 and even Mass Effect 3. In fact, most people you talk to will say the reveal of Mass Effect 1 is the only thing that made Mass Effect 1 good. Mass Effect 2 and 3 is really the good story, and then people might criticize the ending of Mass Effect 3. So I would say you are objectively wrong on that front, just based on the amount of people and what they like. There are very few people that think Mass Effect 1 is the best Mass Effect. There are a ton of people that think Mass Effect 2 and 3 are where it's at, and they think that because of the story. So I wonder, are you trying to just make a point, and you're trying to run defense? The developers of Dragon Age Veilguard don't need you defending them. And no matter what you say, you will never convince me that they are the worst developers in the world and that none of them deserve to be in the gaming industry. So you can stop running defense for them. You can stop trying to stand up for them. I have no time for any of the developers that worked on Dragon Age Veilguard, and I will never have any time for the developers that work on Dragon Age Veilguard. I think they all deserve to lose their jobs, and I will stick to that forever. That is my belief, and I'm sticking to it. Did you hear that Tangled is getting a Love Action remake? What the hell is Tangled, waifu? You see, Shadius, but now you're just revealing yourself. Because the antagonist of 1 is literally the antagonist of 2 and 3. It is the same throughput. There is no difference. In fact, if you thought the antagonist of 1 was good, 3 should blow your socks off. Because 3 is not just one of them, it's millions of them. So what are you doing? Like, what are you trying to do? I'm sorry, I do not agree with you. Creative department of Veilguard, right? Game was running pretty smoothly. Bad guy in Emmy is just the brainwash guy, isn't it? Prospect, no. No. The bad guy in Emmy is... have you never played Mass Effect? Because if you've played Mass Effect, it'd make a lot more sense if you played Mass Effect. If you haven't played Mass Effect, it'd be very difficult to explain it to you. Because, yeah, you could probably make the argument Saren... I wouldn't even, I don't call Saren the antagonist. Because Sovereign is the antagonist. The Reaper is the antagonist. Saren is just a puppet for Sovereign. The Saren's reveal, or Saren's thing, I would say, plays a very minor part in what made the story good. Yeah, Shadius, you and I will fundamentally disagree on that, but it's fine. If I could make a game, I would make a Flash Gordon-inspired adventure RPG game full of rocket ships and so on, and Flash Gordon is out of copyright now. I don't even know who Flash Gordon is, so I'm just going to leave it there. And I'll let you go with that one. I have no idea who that is. I have a bit of a culture story for you guys. So this is not the normal content that I make, but you guys know, I don't know if you know, but a few weeks ago, there was a girl called Lily Phillips on OnlyFans. And Lily Phillips had a plan. Lily Phillips wanted to be famous. And Lily Phillips was going to do everything in her power to be famous. No matter what, she was going to be famous. So Lily Phillips decided to do something that I think most people would look at and say, what the hell is going on? Lily Phillips decided to sleep with 100 men in a single day. 100 men in a single day. Each of the men had 2 minutes. She allowed the men to finish on her face, getting a lot of it in her eyes. At the end of the video, her eyes are blood red. Now, luckily, the video that I watched wasn't her video doing it. It was a documentary shot by a YouTuber that sort of doesn't show any of the actual sex footage, but it shows the before and after. Her eyes were burning, and sort of she was feeling a little bit weird, and she started crying eventually as a result of just feeling overwhelmed, I guess you could say. Now, there's a couple of things that's very, very wrong with that. So first and foremost, you can actually see it on her face as, you know, she's sort of in the aftermath of all of this. In fact, it's so bad that when they open the door to the room where all of it happened, the cameraman, you can audibly hear him go, ugh! He wants to throw up. The smell that came out of that room was just so much that he actually wanted to barf as he was smelling it. The floor was completely full of condom wrappers and condoms and all sorts of stuff. You can see on her face that she's not proud of what just happened. She's saying that, you know, she's glad it's over and it was fun, but her face does not speak of that. Her eyes does not speak of someone that is proud of what they just did. Her eyes looks dead. Genuinely looks dead. And you could say, well, she's just tired. That's not, tired is one thing, and you could see that she was tired. But you see, from my perspective, sex isn't just physical. Sex has a spiritual connection to it. There's a psychological connection to sex. And what this girl did was, and I can prove it, by the way. I can prove that sex is not just physical. We have the research on this. So, I don't know if you guys know what pair bonding is. Pair bonding is the ability to connect with a fellow human being. So, pair bonding is sort of very important in marriage. If you can't pair bond with other human beings, it becomes very difficult to be married to someone, because it's that pair bond that stops you from cheating, that keeps you in love with another person, that basically keeps you in the marriage. Because marriage is hard, and without that pair bond, it becomes very, very tricky to actually work it, right? Now, the current averages, and it's different for every human being, but if we look at all human beings and we average it out, men can sleep with about 10 women before their ability to pair bond is severely impacted. And by the way, it is linear, so with every single human that you sleep with, your ability to pair bond goes down. By the time you hit 10 as a man, you are what they call clinically incapable of pair bonding. So you will find a woman that you will marry, but you will have no bond with that woman. So that woman serves a purpose. Maybe the purpose is sex, maybe the purpose is children, but she is not your bond mate because you have no ability to bond with that person. For women, the number is 5. So after 5 men, women lose the ability to pair bond. Now it is called clinically because you can fix it, but it takes a lot of therapy to sort of get back. You'll never be as good as it was once, but you can fundamentally get it back. So this girl has, I think, at this point, completely decimated that ability, and all in the name of fame. She wanted to be famous. The look on her eyes afterwards was the look of someone who is desperately unhappy. And I will venture a guess and say I would not be surprised if self-deletion is somewhere in the future of this girl, because her eyes showed someone who recognized that they had just lost something big. And there's other bad things to this as well. You could risk the more sexual partners you have, the more you risk your ability to get pregnant. So women who are very sexually active can actually severely impact their ability to get pregnant. So there's also that. But that's not even why I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this because apparently the problem isn't Lily Phillips and her decision to, in the name of fame, sleep with 100 men in a single day. No. The shame is on the men who decided to show up. It's not Lily Phillips' fault that she slept with 100 men. It's the 100 men that showed up. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where we are now. This is the world that we live in. It's amazing to me. There has never in the history of the earth been a case where a gender has been so privileged than modern women. For a modern woman, the idea, even the hint that she should take responsibility for any of her actions is unthinkable. It is considered misogynistic to even demand that a woman may need to take responsibility for her actions. We see it everywhere. We see it in the abortion debate, right? You hear it all the time. My body, my choice. But then if you spend 5 seconds thinking about my body, my choice, you realize, wait, no one is removing your choice. We have a problem with the fact that you wish to circumvent the consequences of your choice. You already made the choice. You made the choice to have sex without a condom. That was your choice. Now there's a consequence. There's a human life that is growing because of the sex that you just had. But instead of taking the responsibility upon yourself and saying, right, well, I have to bear the responsibility of my own actions, what you get is women going, well, actually, I don't want to. I want to be able to make decisions and live my life willy-nilly without anyone telling me what I can or cannot do. And then if a baby is there, I'll kill it. And then you won't call it death. You won't call it murder because that makes me feel bad. Instead, we'll call it abortion. No. We'll call it pro-choice. We won't even call it abortion because that might also make me feel bad. We'll call it pro-choice. So it's not, How dare you take away my choice? I thought you guys were all for freedom of choice. You were all for freedom, and now suddenly I can't be free? Well, no, you can be free, but you freely decided to have sex without a condom. Now you bear the consequences of it. Women are the most coddled individuals in our society. The fact that women refuse to take responsibility, even now, a woman decides for fame and money to have sex with 100 different men, and it's the men's fault for exploiting her. What are we doing? Like, what the hell are we doing? We are raising a generation of women that can, under no circumstances, operate within society because they have no idea what consequences are, what it means to be responsible, what it means to actually think about the decisions that you make. They just sort of want everything given to them and then refuse to take responsibility if anything bad may or may not happen. This is not good. Where we're heading now is not good. But of course, that's my opinion. I don't know, maybe there are people who think, oh, this is perfectly fine. Well, parents should act on that difference or reap the consequences. Women do bad things, equal women most affected. True. Also, this has always been the case. Men have always been blamed for any such misconduct. It's not a recent phenomena. Shadius, I feel like it is more recent, though. I don't necessarily agree that it is. In the past, a woman like Lily Phillips would be pushed out of society. She would be shunned by society, right? Because she would be considered a harlot. She would be considered a prostitute, and prostitutes were not really welcome in pleasant society. I would say for a long time, men were allowed to skirt their own, at least not all men, most men had to deal with the consequences of all of their actions. But your sort of more rich men, so like the 1%ers, they were allowed to get away with pretty much everything, right? They were very privileged. And you kind of saw the results of that. Most of them ended up being completely useless individuals as a result of never actually having to take responsibility for their own actions. Men have always been blamed for this kind of misconduct, true, but it's only in recent times that women have so much power to choose their own actions. Done early is troublesome. When technology improve, eventually we will be able to put a fertilized egg cell and put it in an artificial womb and grow it from there. That is true, waifu. Shadius, so you see, you and I disagree on abortion and what you mean when you say as long as it's done early. So I'm assuming by early what you mean is as long as there's no heartbeat or no brain function, right? I'm assuming that's what you mean. By that definition, the current timeline is completely bonkers. Women have the ability up until, I think, 22 weeks or something to do it. The problem, of course, is that we can detect a heartbeat as early as 8 weeks. So, in other words, it technically should be 8 weeks. 12 at the most. The other problem, of course, is that if you speak to most medical scientists, they will admit there may actually be a heartbeat far earlier. Our medical equipment is just not really able to pick it up yet. The same with brain function. It's not that it isn't there, it's just that we don't have the ability to measure it yet. So fundamentally, we might be killing a lot of babies that already have a heartbeat and have brain function. We just don't know it yet. My other problem, and this is actually the one that I think should convince most people, that abortion is just evil no matter how you cut it. Okay, So let's say there is a woman. Let's say she is 10 weeks pregnant. You have two women. Both are 10 weeks pregnant. Woman A heads down to an abortion clinic, kills her baby. Right? Nothing happens to her. She can kill her baby. Woman B walks down the street and I punch her in the stomach as hard as humanly possible. Should I go to jail for murder or attempted murder if she loses the baby after I punched her in the stomach? Should I go to jail for that? You see, this is where most abortion or pro-abortion people start to break down. This is where the argument starts to break down, where they'll start going, but that's not really fair. Like, you should go to jail for harassment. No, we're asking a very specific question. Should I go to jail for murder if she loses the baby? Because right now, as the law throughout the world stands, I will absolutely go to jail for murder if she loses the baby at 10 weeks. But if she chooses to kill the baby at 18 weeks, that's not murder. If she chooses to kill the baby at 22 weeks, that's not murder. If she chooses to kill the baby at 24 weeks, that's not murder. If she chooses to kill the baby at 25 weeks, that will be murder now. Although, if it was just the day before, it would still be 24 weeks and that's fine. So when you actually start to look into the mechanics of the abortion debate, you start to realize that this is logically untenable. It is logically impossible to make any of these arguments. So I can commit abortion on 24 weeks and 6 days, but not on 24 weeks and 7 days, because then that's 25 weeks. Now you're murdering your baby. What changed in the last 24 hours? In fact, we could go in even further to show the ridiculousness of the argument. I could kill my baby at 24 weeks, 6 days, and 23 hours, 59 minutes, 59 seconds. I kill the baby, I'm good. That's a pure abortion. However, at 1 minute past 12, that would be murder now. You just murdered your baby. Wait, what do you mean I just murdered my baby? This was okay 2 seconds ago. Yep, but it's now murder. So you just immediately realize there's no logical throughput to this argument. And then you realize that if I punched a woman in the stomach really hard to the point where she loses her baby, even at 4 weeks, I will be done for murder. Because everyone actually knows that it's murder. No one actually argues that it isn't, except when it isn't. Because for some reason, the difference between murder and not murder is whatever a woman chooses. So the woman says, well, no, I want to commit murder, and then it isn't murder because I said it's not murder. But I will be done for murder if she loses the baby. Your argument is not logical. Your argument is not rational. Your argument is fraught with logical inconsistency, but for some reason it's framed as pro-choice, and we can't touch the argument. It's murder, and I, for one, say women should be able to commit abortion, but then they should go to jail for murder. Everyone wins. You want to kill your baby? Go for it, and then we lock you up. And you are now a citizen of the state. I feel like that is fair. Because technically speaking, all of us are allowed to commit murder. We go to jail afterwards, but we are allowed to. No one can stop you from committing murder. I also think we should not stop people from committing murder in the form of abortion, but then they should be prosecuted and they should go to jail for murder, right? And that's just the end of it. I think that is the fairest way to deal with the problem, because we really don't want to take away women's rights. We want to be sure that a woman has the right to kill her baby if she chooses to do so. And then the justice system deals with her. Life sounds like some pagan belief, to be honest. How is this about gaming? You grifter. This issue for Twitch. We got into a discussion about a woman that's had sex with 100 different guys. Alright, never mind. We'll move on. We'll actually talk about video games now. Not one to offend, just want to ask for opinion. If the woman get pregnant by accident, is it better to have her bear the child and send her to orphanage or abortion? There's prospect. So, in my view, it will always be better to have the child, always. Because there are plenty of couples who would love to have children, but can't find children because it's very difficult to find kids in the foster system. Specifically babies. Most people who adopt would like to adopt babies. The issue, of course, is that there are very few babies for adoption because, well, 300,000 babies a year are killed thanks to abortion just in the United States of America. So, yeah, I think you should. And to be fair, you have plenty of women who end up having the kids, even if they didn't think they could, and those kids turn out to be an absolute blessing, right? So I don't think that you should be allowed to kill the baby just because you don't think. Like, here's the thing. Should you have considered the fact that you cannot afford to have a baby now before or after having sex? Like, surely, if you knew that you can't afford to get pregnant right now, why did you not use a condom? Why weren't you on the pill? You know, if you were going to have sex, you knew beforehand. The idea that now suddenly, you know, you need to be... Now suddenly you can't afford the kid, so now you can kill the kid is weird. It's a very weird stance to have. Because you knew yesterday when you were having sex that you can't afford a kid. What changed? Did you just not think of that? No, I don't think that you... I do not think that that is an argument in any way, shape, or form. I do not believe that that is an argument. You have to live with the consequences of your own actions. Everyone else has to do that. Men don't have the right to say, well, actually, I don't want this child. If your girlfriend gets pregnant by your penis, you're a father. Congratulations. Whether you want to or not. It's wild to me that we have this double standard where women get to say, well, I don't want to deal with the consequences of my own actions, but men have to deal with the consequences of their own actions, regardless, right? And they not just that, men have to also deal with the consequences of the woman's actions, because a woman can absolutely decide to abort the child even if the man doesn't want that abortion, and the man has no say in it. He just has to go with it. You know, he has to go along with it because that's just the choices that she wants to make. No. We're heading for a very bad time in our society as a result of this. Very, very bad time. Look, you're allowed to have your opinion on everything. You guys will note that I don't remove people for their opinions, and I'm happy to have people discuss, but I will never change my mind on this. This is how I feel, and it is my position to me makes logically the most sense. Went on the certificate. True. Anonymous Scout, there's plenty of stories, I believe, throughout the world of miraculous things like this. Growfile. Calm down, bro. Calm down. I'm seeing you. You are valid, sir. I'm hearing you. Please feel special, but calm down. I'm living with the consequences of my past actions after years of not taking care of my teeth and eating too much chocolates. Part of my jawbone is rotten. I have to blame only myself. Whoa. That is tough, waifu. That is very tough. Grofal. We're getting into gaming again. Don't worry. We're getting into gaming again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, back to the old gaming discussion. Assassin's Creed Shadows. How many of you are excited for Assassin's Creed Shadows? How many of you think that this is the game? This is the one. This is the game that's going to put Ubisoft back on the map. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have very bad news for you. That is not going to happen. Now, you might originally see this headline and you might think, Barako, what is so bad about this? If you allow me a few minutes of your open-mindedness, I need you to be open-minded and listen to why this is a problem. And I promise you that by the end of it, it'll make a lot more sense to you. So Assassin's Creed Shadows will have what is called canon mode introduced into the game. And they basically say, choices come more into play when recruiting allies and romance some of the characters, the director Jonathan Dumont said. Since the fanbase is divided on branching dialogues, we have incorporated an option called canon mode, which allows you to play the game with choices already made for you, to give you a choice-free experience. The article writer here, the journalist, says that's the other drawback of choice-based gameplay. The choices you make may not stand the test of time. When the inevitable sequel comes out, that can be genuinely irritating. Now, the person writing the article basically says this is beautiful, right? Because they feel paralyzed by making choices. You can see it up here at the start where it says, it's a little embarrassing to admit, but I am sometimes paralyzed by choices in RPGs. In fact, I am currently in the midst of a very big situation in Cyberpunk 2077, Phantom Liberty. I know exactly what place they're talking about. This is the mark of a weak individual. Choices should not paralyze you. Choices in video games really shouldn't paralyze you. It's a choice in a video game, bro. You can save scum your way out of it if you don't like the choice that you're making. It's not that difficult. Choices are important because choice is how RPGs work. If you're going to make an RPG, the ability for players to be able to choose how they wish to engage with the world is important. The inclusion or creation of a canon mode, to me, appears as if you have a bunch of developers that do not trust the player. They don't trust the player to make their own choices, to decide how the game should play out. And I'll get into why in a little bit. I just want to finish. This is also from the delay section of the game where they literally just explain, we've been able to make changes and tweaks on parkour, for example, or touch up parry mechanics, or work on cinematic transitions. This is one of the reasons they delayed it. For example, we felt there was a stickiness in the parkour. The delay allowed us to accelerate the responsiveness of inputs and fix rooftop behaviors that were impeding on nose fluidity. The team is making something we are all proud of with this extra time. Every single time in the last few years where I've heard a developer say these words, the team is making something we are already proud of, it turns into a mess. Every single time. I don't know why, but, well, actually, I do know exactly why. And it is part of this that I want you to be open-minded about. All of the problems in the modern video game industry, all of the woke politics, all of the bad writing, because woke politics will automatically make writing bad, but sometimes you just get bad writing even if something isn't woke. The bad writing of the modern era, the bad game design of the modern era, all of it, the bad movies that we see every single year, like every single month there's a new movie, new television series that come out, and they're just all bad. It's almost like finding a gem in the dirt when something comes out that's actually relatively decent. The reason for all of this is a phenomena known as self-insertion. So what does self-insertion mean in the context of writing? I remember back in text analysis when I was studying drama at university, one of our subjects was text analysis. And part of text analysis, we would get these plays that were written throughout history, and we would have to analyze these plays. So some of it would be poems, some of it would be actual plays, some of it would even be movies, where you would look at a play and you would analyze the writing style, the quality of the writing, the kind of actors that could play roles, things of that nature, right? So you kind of go very deep into analyzing the themes and the concepts within the text. And there was this one writer, I can't remember his name, so don't ask. And even if I could remember his name, I probably wouldn't be able to pronounce it. It was a Russian playwright. His play was given to us as an example of what bad writing looks like. And the reason it was considered to be one of the worst plays ever written was because the entire play reads as a narcissistic wet dream. The entire play has all of these moments where the main character breaks out of the fourth wall, speaks directly to the audience about the gripes of the writer. So the writer has inserted themselves into the work, and every single fabric of the work is just the writer's self-insert. So you don't, in good writing, the author disappears from the page. This is the mark of a great writer, where you don't even see the author. It becomes just the story. In great acting, for example, the actor needs to disappear from the stage. So when people look at you acting, they don't see you. They see the character that you're playing. The best actors out there can do that, right? And they're very good at it. Al Pacino, for example, Anthony Hopkins, even Jack Nicholson, Leonardo DiCaprio is able to do this quite often. They disappear. But then you have sort of more your Ryan Reynolds types, where they're not bad actors, but they're not great actors. Because you see, they don't disappear. When you watch a Ryan Reynolds film, you're always very aware that Ryan Reynolds is in the film, right? Because it's Ryan Reynolds and you know it's Ryan Reynolds. Bradley Cooper is another great example of a brilliant actor that has that ability to disappear. Another guy that I will actually say does it very well, although these days I think he's cancelled, was DeFranco. DeFranco was another brilliant actor that was able to disappear from the roles that he played. And yeah, I do think Jim Carrey is a great actor. Not in everything. There are some of the roles that he played that was so over the top that it's impossible to really disappear, because it is more physical theater kind of stuff. So it's very difficult to disappear. But I think generally you watch Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, you watch The Truman Show, Jim Carrey is a great actor. He is really good at what he does. But fundamentally, that's the mark of good art. The artist disappears, and all you have is the work. Canon mode is part of a new type of artist, the narcissistic type. You see, the reason you look at something like Dragon Age the Veilguard and you see Tash's entire storyline is fan fiction. The developer that wrote Tash's storyline wrote herself. This was her wet dream. This was her moment to be non-binary and to be able to force the world to play into her fantasy. To be able to look at the world and say, I am a they, them. And everyone just affirm they, them. That's why the scenes with Tash is so incredibly uncomfortable because it's not natural. It doesn't fit the world. But you see, it doesn't have to fit the world because it's fan fiction. It's the author very much putting themselves in the scene and saying, respect me. You will respect me. You will respect my choices. And in fact, you will flagellate yourself if you don't respect my choices. Whereas this is where the whole Isabella scene comes in, where she does a barf, right? Pulling a barf, doing 10 push-ups when you misgender someone. It is all based on this power fantasy that the writer has, wanting to feel relevant. The canon mode in Assassin's Creed Shadows is none other than that. You see, in the past, if we go back to Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3, if we go back to the old Dragon Age 1, 2, and 3, if we go back to Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, even Baldur's Gate 3, what is one of the hallmarks of those RPGs? Almost none of us actually know what the canonical ends of those things are. To this day, there are people that debate the canonical end of Witcher 3. To this day, there are people that debate the canonical end of Mass Effect. To this day, there are people that debate the canonical end of Baldur's Gate 1, Baldur's Gate 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Dragon Age Origins, and it's canonical because in Dragon Age Origins, your choices carry over to Dragon Age 2. So no one knows what is the canonical end of Dragon Age Origins. But that's part of the beauty. Because for years, people will continue to talk about what is the actual ending. It's what we love. It's part of the charm of RPGs. But what happens if you're a writer and you believe that your story is so good, so pure, so perfect, that to even begin to stray away from the actual story would be blasphemy? Well, you invent canon mode. So you tell the player, boy, sure, we'll let you dabble with your own choices. As long as you know your choices are wrong, our choices are right. Here is how you should have played the game. Here is the choices you should have made. Sure, we wanted to give you the ability to make some choices, but here is how you should have made those choices. Because we personally think you made big mistakes. Now, I wonder, when it comes to canon mode, what are the chances that you will be forced into some kind of homosexual relationship with one of the characters? Because remember, they do actually say that some of the big choices here are actually around romance. Romance, who to romance and who to talk to and which characters to ultimately end up with. You see, that's where this canon mode, I think, really comes in. They don't want players to make the wrong decision when it comes to love. The whole point is to celebrate the opposite of heteronormative relationships. You know, and instead celebrate the pride flag, so to speak. And it's all done as an absolute FU to the player base. A big fat FU. Because what these developers don't seem to understand is nothing is going to feel worse than playing through the game, making a bunch of decisions, only to then realize immediately afterwards none of your decisions actually matter because they were all wrong. Remember, part of the beauty of RPGs is this is the decisions I made, and this is how it played out. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but these are the ones that I made. And I'm happy with the choices that I made. I'm happy with the ending I got. But now you're immediately going to know that the choices that you made were the wrong ones. I personally, I cannot think of something that is more egregious and more anti-gamer than this. I can't think of anything that is more anti-gamer than this. That's why we'll play... Yeah, we will be playing Monster Hunter Wilds, Grifter. That is true. Is defined by, yeah, it's your ancestors' genetic memory. Ravy G, well, the old school Assassin's Creed games was understandable because the whole backstory was just your ancestors' memories, right? And that really worked. It's clear that that's not what they're going for because they do want to give you choice. In the old school Assassin's Creed games, if I remember correctly, you didn't really have choice. You just did what you did. The choice was more in like, how do you want to assassinate this? The planning and the pre-planning and sort of, do you want to take a more direct approach or a more sneaky approach? That was the fun part of the game anyways. It was this, planning assassinations. I'll wait for that. Yeah. Well, hopefully it does happen for you. Shadius, if an RPG makes the decision not to include choice, that is not a thing that I begrudge them for. Right? I don't begrudge that. It's a game decision. I think you do start to kind of play around with what an RPG means. I think you do sort of maybe veer a little bit more into action adventure at that point. So if there's no real choice that you're making, it's much more of a action adventure than it is necessarily an RPG. But even there, I'm fine with it if that was the original vision. But it's clear that that wasn't the original vision, because if that was the original vision, they would just do what they did in the original Assassin's Creeds. Which is, you don't have choice because you're literally playing the memories of your ancestor. Now, you did technically have a little bit of choice because technically your choices and how you do things would become the memory of your ancestor, which was a nice little hook into things, right? But fundamentally, you didn't really have romance from what I remember. At least I never had romance in the original Assassin's Creeds. But if you're gonna offer choice, that's where I think you now have to be okay with people misconstruing the choices and making the wrong choices as far as you're concerned. You have to accept that because you as the author, you don't matter. And that's, I think, the biggest problem. A lot of these people don't understand that as the author, you don't matter. Well, Odyssey isn't what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the original Assassin's Creed games, so 1, 2, and 3. Years before Odyssey would even be an idea. You know, back when it was actually good games still? Those are the ones that I'm talking about. Kuruna, how you doing? Grovel, do yourself a favor. Pick up Assassin's Creed 1, 2, and 3. Trust me when I tell you, the old Assassin's Creed games, they were the good ones. They weren't open world, but they were phenomenal. They were truly phenomenal. It is insane. Black Flag was a good game, not to be undersold here. I don't want to pretend like Black Flag wasn't a good game. But Black Flag, to me, wasn't anywhere near as good as the original. At least the first two. Like, the Ezio storyline really is the one that I'm most in love with. Is the Ezio storyline. And I think that's 2 and 3 maybe. If I'm not mistaken. Is it 2 and 3? Is it 1 and 2? Can't remember now. It's way back in the day. But those were the storyline. That was the storyline that really sold me on Assassin's Creed. Because while it wasn't open world, it was open city. The city was open for you to explore and pretty much go anywhere. Go up, go down, run away from guards and stuff. It was phenomenal. Altair is the one. Yes. Altair is one. But it is good. All right, so then we have a bit of a... Well, I don't know what to make of this story, if I'm very honest with you guys. I have no idea what to make with this story. I don't know if you guys know who Alyssa Mercante is, or Mercanto. Don't know how to pronounce her name. But Alyssa is a previous Kotaku journalist. Well, I say journalist. I should probably just say writer, because she's not a journalist. She's not ever done anything journalistic even close to relevant or significant. She's just she's a writer. She looks at Twitter, sees news, writes an article about it, and then posts it and gets paid for it. Now, Alyssa Mercante really became big news around Gamergate 2 when she started running incredible defense for the gaming industry and attacking gamers relentlessly. Now, to give you guys a very quick recap of how all of this really started, it started with the discovery of Sweet Baby Inc. And very specifically, it started with Cabruno, his name is whatever, he has his own website now, and they run a huge Steam group. But they basically discovered a Sweet Baby Inc. affiliation where Sweet Baby Inc. is considered to be DEI consultants, where they will go in and they will basically advise game companies on how to make their games more inclusive. And all Cabrutus was saying was this company is attached to this game. One of the co-founders of Sweet Baby Inc. then retweeted this Cabrutus's post on Steam and basically said, get him banned. So weaponized their own audience to try and get this guy banned off of Steam. That's where it all started. If that co-owner, co-founder of Sweet Baby Inc. just didn't retweet or tweet about Cabrutus, Gamergate 2 never happens. Because none of us would ever even have known about this. Because at the time, Cabrutus was an unknown in the industry. His tweet had almost no following. No one knew anything about any of this until this Sweet Baby Inc. guy amplified it. And that then brought basically all of this to our attention. And then we finally had an answer what the hell was going on in video games. Sweet Baby Inc. Now, Alyssa Mercant was the one that basically pushed this sort of anti-gamer rhetoric. She was eventually fired from Kotaku, or laid off in the nicest terms possible, which should tell you why she's, she is... Well, she will claim that she wasn't fired from Kotaku, that she stepped away from Kotaku. But as we now know, thanks to this story, the way they get rid of people at Kotaku in those places is basically saying, hey, either leave or we fire you. And then they choose to leave so that they can say, oh, but I left. I didn't, I left by my own volition. Now, after being basically dragged by Smash JT, this was really the big break for Smash as well, because they started doing a lot of research into Alyssa Mercant and her connections in the Sweet Baby Inc. nonsense and Kotaku and all the rest of it. She started to threaten to sue Smash JT. Now, of course, the problem with this was that she kept harassing people like Smash, people within the gaming industry. She kept harassing the Gamergaters, right? She would constantly tweet at them, tweet about them, but of course do that thing that most of the cowards on Twitter do, where they don't retweet you, they screenshot your post and then they post it on their page, so you don't actually know that they just posted about you. So she would constantly do this. Her page was basically filled with her attacking other creators. But then as soon as creators clapped back, and because most of us aren't cowards, so we would just straight up retweet what she said. So as soon as this happens, she would cry foul. She'd be like, oh, they're weaponizing their audience, attacking me, even though she's the one weaponizing her audience consistently to attack everyone. But then as soon as you retweet her, now you are the one attacking her. And, you know, so this is sort of the I'm giving you guys a very broad overview of everything that happened. I have many videos out there explaining all of this in detail, so I'm not going to go into it again. But you need to know is she has finally sued. So she has finally said, enough is enough. I am suing you. But in so doing, she then posts the actual lawsuit. She and this dude called Kate Bush's husband. This is one of the most woke idiots online ever. You follow this guy, you have brain cancer within 2 minutes, guaranteed. They post the lawsuit. One of the things they do in the post with the lawsuit is they block out her address. So they remove her address from the lawsuit. Now remember, lawsuits are public. So technically speaking, it's not doxing. But when they post the lawsuit, they remove her address. However, they do not remove Smash's address. She posts Smash's address to all of her followers. Now you might say, but Acklon, wait, this is public information. Yes. How many of her followers do you genuinely think would go to the court website to request this trial document so that they can get Smash's address? Very few people would do that. But by tweeting it out to all of your followers, you are absolutely putting Smash in danger. Because your followers are unhinged. They're left-wing. Of course they're unhinged. You've just posted this guy's address. I don't think it's illegal, TV, because again, you cannot dox someone for information that is publicly available. Sadly, the law doesn't operate that way. But I do think that it is a scumbag move. So I do think that she did it knowing full well that this could. So I just want to be clear. I've gone through the lawsuit. I'm not going to bore you guys with it, but there's no lawsuit there. She's basically claiming that Smash harassed her. That's why she's suing him. Even though at the time of all of this happening, she was a journalist working for Kotaku, meaning she is a public persona, she's a public person, and you can absolutely talk about public people. They're public. You're allowed to talk about them. So the lawsuit is probably not going to go anywhere, but that's not the reason for it. The reason she's doing this is they are desperate to shut us up. They are desperate to get us to back down, to drop this Gamergate nonsense, and to just go back to accepting that video games are shit now. And there's literally nothing we can do about it. If both have addresses, where in the document I could give her some benefit of the doubt, but having her address censored while leaving Smashes in, yeah, 1,000,000,000% intentional. Corona, that was my initial take as well. If her address was also visible and his, sure, maybe a slight oversight, maybe she just didn't even realize, but clearly she knew. And instead of doing the decent thing of actually, and I just want to point out, Grums actually did the decent thing. So her lawyer only blotted out her address but left her county in. Grums actually went ahead and also blocked out her county, because he felt like even giving the county here might be a little bit too far. You see, this is what the proper thing is to do. Even if it is your enemy and you really hate them, there are certain boundaries we do not cross. There are certain things that we just don't engage in. And one of them is doxing, even if this is called doxing light, maybe, because it is technically not doxing. You're still making sure that Smash now has to think twice before saying anything else. Because you never actually know. Now, of course, it's not just Alyssa. So Alyssa first doxed him. And then Kate Bush's husband also doxed him. And they are weaponizing the fans as much as possible to try and shut Smash up. The whole point here is to get us to quiet down. And you'll see in our last story of the day, this isn't new. This is going to continue to happen. It's probably going to happen a lot more. But this is problematic. Journalists should not be under any circumstance allowed to sue members of the public for criticizing them when they don't do their jobs. I don't believe that that is how that works. If you're not doing your job, you are, as far as I'm concerned, fair game. TDS has some issues too. Yeah, we're going to be talking about Master of TDS right after this. Essentially, it would be a civil case as well. It will get her broke with all her mobs. Peter, I don't know if laws were actually broken here. That's the one thing we should keep in mind. I don't think laws were actually broken here. Grofal, again, she can't really be banned for doxing because she technically didn't dox. Remember, doxing is only when you reveal the address of someone whose address isn't public. So, for example, if I posted my address online and then someone took that post and then shared it or sent it, sent it to a bunch of other people, they're technically not doxing me. Because I already doxed myself. Right? It's not doxing if you already did it yourself. The only time it is doxing is when they found your address that wasn't publicly available and then they posted it against your will. Seen her in layer. Wait, have you seen her layer? What layer? I don't think that guy is banned, Shadius. I saw one of his tweets not long ago. No, I haven't seen her lawyer TV. But yeah, as soon as you guys started saying Ron Coleman, I started thinking about Ron from what's his name? Ron, man, from Parks and Recreation. And when I saw the Ron Coleman stuff, I was just immediately like, whoa, bro. Smash should do what Ron does. He does not allow anyone to follow him. I wonder if Ron is going to take this further. He might do. He might actually do. But alright. Ladies and gentlemen, Master of the TDS. Now, it should be made clear before we even start, Master of the TDS has to have autism in the best possible way. This guy and his wife has this tendency to just go above and beyond when it comes to research, specifically on Sweet Baby Inc. and the rot that is Sweet Baby Inc. Like, they have to be autistic. There's no other explanation for it. Because if you've seen any of their Obsidian work sheets, it's nuts. It's like the branching arcs of everything that's going on. It's absolutely crazy. But of course, it's good, and we need that. Now, Master of the TDS have done a number of really good things within this space. And one of the big things within this space has been unveiling and unmasking the rot that is sort of video game consultancy firms. Sorry, just completely blacked out there for a second. The video game consultancy firms. When you dig deep enough from the first timeline, which would be sort of 2013, 2012 even, when you go deep enough, you start to realize that all of these consultancy firms all basically stem from the same movement. And over the course of years, they have sort of split off into separate channels that continue to do exactly the same stuff. I won't take anything away from his video. You guys can go watch his video. It is a long one, but it's really, really cool, where he just shows you how Sweet Baby Inc. breaks off, and then Games for Diversity breaks off, and the PAL group breaks off a little bit earlier. It's insane, but it all stays sort of the same. I covered a video yesterday where I showed you how a lot of the people that serve on the boards of, say, for example, the PAL group also own Sweet Baby Inc. and serve on the board of Sweet Baby Inc., but then the PAL group also owns Games for Diversity, and members for Games for Diversity serve on the PAL group board of directors. So it's sort of like this whole mess of, it's all the same company meant to look like multiple companies. So the rot just sort of keeps spreading. And it's all in the name of making it look like legitimate business. This is a legitimate service that many people want. That's why there's this many of us. And of course, it also allows them to attack things on various different fronts so that they can really spread their influence as much as is possible, but also spread their reach. Because one of the ways, for those of you that didn't know, one of the ways in which they bully companies into accepting their help is by threatening to send their followers after them. So if you do not accept our help, if you do not accept our consultancy, we cannot promise that the media will write favorably about you. This came out a few months ago after Gamers, by the way, spelled Gaymers, Gamers, which is another consultancy firm that is all about the gay consultancy. They sent an email. I'm trying to remember now who the developer was, but it was an indie developer who received an email from them saying, hey, we can really help boost your game. We have all of these thousands and millions of followers on all of these different platforms. And if we talk about your game, we will guarantee that it will be mentioned at least once in our weekly podcast. And we can also tweet it out this many times. We'll only charge you this much. But if you don't want to do this, you have to be aware that a lot of the media companies that we work with will not necessarily write favorably about you, because you will be rejecting, I think, something about homosexual awareness or some shit like that. So fundamentally, it's sort of like this extortion racket. Either you do, or we mess you up, right? And what Master of TDS did is he at least partly started to expose this, started to expose all of these different ways in which they're extorting the gaming industry and how they're doing it. Now, what happened is, as you can see here, we know that SBI has been trying desperately to get Master of the TDS to remove their video. Their first way of doing it was to go after YouTube themselves. They sent a cease and desist to YouTube, claiming that the video broke privacy laws. All of the information that was in their video is publicly available on their websites. So therefore, there were no privacy laws that were broken. Their new plan now was they got a relative of one of the SBI members to basically beg Master of the TDS to censor their video, to remove certain things from the video, certain things that they don't want to see. Now, I believe right now they're sort of playing they're sort of playing the nice guy because they desperately want to stay in the shadows. I would not be surprised if this eventually reaches the level of lawsuits, because their biggest tool is secrecy. The way Sweet Baby Inc. and these other woke consultancy firms make their money, the way they have the ability to influence the way that they do, is through operating from the shadows. No one knows who we are, no one knows that we exist, and we can just continue doing what we're doing. This is why the Cabratus thing is such a, or Cabrutus thing, is such a beautiful moment of irony. Because if the co-founder of Sweet Baby Inc. did not magnify Cabrutus's post, none of us would ever have known about it, and they would have continued to operate within the shadows. Remember, we didn't even know these guys existed. These guys have been making a living within the gaming industry, influencing games for years, and none of us even knew they existed. They never advertise. They never make noise. They don't tell us which games they're really involved in, because they don't want us to know. You see, because now that we know, we're capable of following it. And this is another thing I think they're very angry about Master of the TDAs for, is the fact that they've now gone so far as what the gaming companies are doing now is they're putting the people who work for Sweet Baby Inc. in the credits, but not the words Sweet Baby Inc. So someone will work for Sweet Baby Inc. And they will be the consultant that worked on the game. Instead of going in association with Sweet Baby Inc., they will have, as one of the consultants, they will list the name of the consultant from Sweet Baby Inc. So then you have to go through all of those names, find the name, and go find which consultancy firm do they actually work for, only to then realize, oh wait, this person works for... So you're now forced to sort of do even deeper. This is how you know that the gaming companies that are working with Sweet Baby Inc., they're also not innocent in this. They are as scumbag as Sweet Baby Inc. Because if they didn't care, if this truly was just something that they genuinely believed is good for gaming and is what the majority of gamers want, why would they keep it secret? Why would you need to keep things secret if it is what you want to do, it's what you believe in, and you are convinced that it is what most gamers believe in as well? Then you would proudly say that, yes, we work with Sweet Baby Inc. and we're proud of that. I have a feeling we're going to uncover a lot more about Sweet Baby Inc. and the gaming industry in general. And I have a feeling it's going to get a lot worse before it gets any better. But ultimately, sunlight is the best disinfectant. So I say we keep shining the light on them and watch them squirm, because they're clearly panicked. Why are we making big changes for less than 4% of the population? Wastelock, because there's a political bend. There's a political reason for all of this. Gives credit to unqualified individuals. They want to have their cake and eat it too, with government grants for inclusiveness. We're supposed to roll over and say, I guess all devs are queer and not much we can do. Take like, yeah, I think their argument is, if we never knew about this, then we would have liked it, right? We wouldn't even have known that we hated the games. We know now that we hate the games because we didn't know. I kind of think that's why all of this is happening. They think that if they just continue to operate in the shadows, none of us would ever have known. We would have just accepted that this is how the games are now, and we would have made peace with the fact that Tash is a non-binary character, even though, in my opinion, non-binary is like the biggest made-up thing ever. To my mind, the way non-binary works is I have friends that are trans, I have friends that are gay, I have friends that are lesbian. I am just a normal girl, but I also want to feel special. I know what I'll do. I'll call myself non-binary. I'll change absolutely nothing about myself. I will literally be the exact same person today than I was yesterday, except now everyone must call me non-binary. It's the most lazy form of victimhood, because it's the ability to be a victim without actually changing anything. You can just do whatever the hell you want now. Because technically speaking, most non-binary people continue to just be the gender that they are. Like, they'll say non-binary female presenting, and then it's a woman presenting female. But wanting to be called non-binary is like... I do not understand what the hell is going on, but this is made up. This is nonsense. Can you imagine? Dude, I genuinely, I've never met anyone IRL that is non-binary. So I wonder sometimes if it isn't just a bunch of online personas. It's just it's the ability to feel special, you know? A power trip when they try to get people arrested in some cases. Well, wait, look, the whole point is, remember, the reason they're doing this is in the modern world, victimhood status determines your status or your position in the hierarchy of life. So it used to be that victims were at the bottom of the totem pole because you were a victim. No one wanted to be a victim. That's why people didn't pretend to be victims, because it was much better to just be normal. But we've sort of flipped the script, where now if you are a victim, you are special, privileged, and you can do whatever the hell you want because you're a victim. So it is very necessary for a young person to be a victim of some kind. And so now, if I can't claim victimhood because I'm not trans or I'm not gay, I'm not a lesbian, well, then I can just say I'm non-binary. And that makes me a victim of a sort, you know? And now I can feel special. Because yes, now I do have that power. If you misgender me, I will attack you. Because how dare you? Because, of course, we've also changed the language around this. Misgendering isn't just misgendering, it's violence. It's a form of violence. From feminist pamphlets, victimhood has become both a sword and a shield. Now identifies as trans, masculine, non-binary. It's just sad. I don't even know who Emma Dumont is. That's probably why she now does that, waifu. I do think there's power in the people we surround ourselves with, definitely. But I think there's also just a case of wanting to feel special. You know, you want to feel special. And well, there's only one way to really feel special. Sorry, I'm just quickly looking here. Nah. It is what it is. Participation trophy generation. They were taught to want to feel special to a degree. Optimal toast. Well, yes. But remember, they were also told from birth. Because remember, most of the young people you see today, and it's not their fault. I want to be clear about this. I don't blame young people for it. They came from homes where parents did the whole, passive parenting, the friendship parenting, where parents are your friends. They are friends with their kids. Parents are no longer saying to their kids, "What are you talking about?" Right? If I went to my dad at the age of 10, and I say to my dad, I think I'm a girl, my dad would have said, "What are you talking? Go play outside." My dad wouldn't just not have even listened to this nonsense, because he's my father. He needs to protect me. And as a child, you need protection more often than not from yourself, because kids do stupid shit, right? So we live in a world now where young kids are constantly told how special they are, how cute and amazing they are. So by the time they come to university, they go to university with a severe, and it's not just that, it's social media then as well. Because they go on social media, they get thousands of likes and you can see it, go on TikTok, look at the enormous amounts of videos on TikTok of people that desperately want to feel special. They're desperate for any sort of fame they can get their hands on. They are consistently trying to project strength, trying to play characters, everything to be noticed, everything to be seen. And so what happens is when they finally enter college, it's usually around college when this stuff starts to, where the rubber hits the road. When you finally realize, but wait a second, you're really not special. You're basically now just one of thousands, because everyone thinks they're special, therefore no one is special. And now you start getting into this victimhood mentality where I have to be more special than my friends who are special, because otherwise I'm not special. And the only way for me to really be special now is to pretend to be something other than what I am, because that's how I'm going to be special. It's sort of like, it's a mess. And I think most young people have no idea what is going on. Like, they don't know why this is happening to them, but it is happening to them. Do you think the age divide makes it worse? Age divide, how so, TB? Age divide of what? So between young and old, or how do you mean? Oh, Michael, I have a friend who literally went through the same thing. And I was actually shocked. I call her a friend. She's not really a friend. It's more someone that I used to go to school with. We were friends in school, but I lost touch completely. And I always thought, because in school she was a super tomboy. I mean, super. Never saw her in a dress. In high school, girls could wear these long trousers. Like, it was actually meant for winter time. So during summer, girls would have to wear these little skirts. I say little, they were long skirts, so 4 fingers above the knee. But then wintertime, they could wear these sort of green pants. And she would always wear the green pants. She would never wear a dress. She was very tomboyish, playing with the boys, wanting to play rugby with the boys. And then the other day, I randomly found her on Instagram. Just randomly, one of my other friends that I follow on Instagram liked her, picture. And I looked at her and I was like, what? She's married. She has 3 kids. She's wearing a dress. Super feminine, super cutesy. And I was like, dude, this girl changed completely. So it is a case of, if you leave kids alone, they will just, normally grow out of phases and they'll end up being normal. Look, after the age of 18, If you still feel like you're trapped in the wrong body, then it becomes your choice. And you can do what you want to do with your body. It's your choice. But prior to that, I think kids require protection, especially from themselves. We can't just go along with everything kids say, because if my parents went along with everything I said, they would have allowed me to jump off of a high building, because at one point I thought I was Spider-Man. I even thought that I could jump off the roof with an umbrella. Luckily, my parents were like, "What are you talking about? Put down the umbrella, go play outside. You cannot jump off the roof with an umbrella. You're going to break something." Right? Luckily, they didn't go, "Well, absolutely, you are Mary Poppins. Live your best life." Luckily, they were sort of very quick to go, No. You're not doing this. That would be madness. Kids want to be different. They grow out of it in most cases. Snivell's very, very true. Do not think what they're talking about to know better. You try. Well, TB, I would say this is also just the sign of the times. When I was growing up, you had to respect your elders. That is not something that happens in modern day society. And I already saw, I'll never forget this, because I went to the UK back in 2004. End of 2004, right up until like 2000 and end of 2006, I was in the UK, and I remember about I may have been there for like a month when I spoke to my mom, and I told her, "Mom, things are so weird here," and she was like, "Why?" And I said, "Kids just do not have respect for old people." Like I will never forget it. I'm in London. I'm walking. I'm crossing the road, and there's like a group of what I would consider 10-year-olds. And one of the 10-year-olds, there's an older dude, not an old dude, but an older dude that's crossing the road, and he's clearly not really paying attention to the kids. But this one kid, as he walks past them, turns around and he goes, "Fuck you, old guy." And I remember looking at it, and I thought, and the old guy just looked past and he was like, "Oh, sorry." And he just walked on. And I thought to myself, if this happened in South Africa, you're dead. Like, that older person isn't going to go, "Oops, sorry." That older person is going to bend you over, spank the living shit out of you, and your parents will probably thank them for it. Your parents will be like, "Yep, he deserved it." Right? That would be what happens in South Africa. And already then, the kids in the UK couldn't care less. And why could the kids in the UK not care less? Because at that time, it was already illegal to beat your child. You could not spank your kid. You could not, give your kid a hiding, because kids have rights. In South Africa, me growing up, there were no such things. Like, if you stepped out of line, your dad would beat the shit out of you. And you would just accept it, and you would, show your friends the black marks on your ass the next day, from taking the hiding. In school, you messed up, you got a hiding. It's as simple as that, right? No questions asked. Very quick, painful, and we all move on. And kids knew their place. You respected older people because they were your elders. That's completely gone now. Kids today, basically, luckily I will say most of the older people I know still beat the shit out of their children. Even though technically it's illegal in South Africa, most parents just don't care. It's like, "Look, bitch, you step out of line, I'm beating the crap out of you. So you either follow my rules or you get out of my house." So I must say, South Africa in that sense is still, I think, on the right track. The times when you were afraid of other kids' fathers too? Yeah, dude. Like, my friends' dads oftentimes would beat us, and my mom would usually be like, "Well, they probably deserved it." And that would be the end of the discussion. Optimal Toast, there's, I remember some guy once said it. There's a magical connection between a child's ears and their ass. It's a very magical connection. We don't quite understand it. Scientifically, it makes no sense. But when the ass burns, the ears open up. Like just, boop. I'm finally hearing everything loud and clear. I will fly right. Yeah, but Shadius, there are also studies that show that it actually has no impact on children. They genuinely go do yourself a favor and go look into the studies about corporal punishment. And you'll find that most of the studies find no real connection between corporal punishment and trauma. The studies that do, and trust me, I've done the research on this, because I used to be anti-corporal punishment. I used to be very much against it. So I did do the research on it. And the research actually shows it very clearly. The studies that show corporal punishment to be traumatic for children and really bad for their psychological development are generally studies that follow kids who are abused. So we're not talking about a parent just disciplining their child. We're talking about a parent taking pleasure in beating up their child. That has very severe impact, obviously, on a kid. But actual just corporal punishment, so just disciplining your child for stepping out, doesn't appear to have any real effect on a kid. Kids know that they did wrong. And if you think about it this way, life isn't kind. If you make mistakes in life, those mistakes can oftentimes destroy you. You know, you do something wrong in life once you're an adult. The world is not a fair place. It's not a nice place. If you, let's use a silly example. When you're a kid and you steal a candy bar, the worst that will happen to you outside of like corporal punishment is, maybe you have to work it back or pay it back, right? But if you grow older and you never learned not to steal, if you steal then, you most likely end up in jail. Jail is not a fun place. It's a very bad place. If you think being spanked is bad for your mental health, I don't think prison is better. But that's usually what happens if you didn't get discipline as a child. The whole point of corporal punishment, the reason you discipline your child, is to ensure that they don't end up paying the ultimate price later in life. So the idea is they learn what is right and what is wrong from a young age, right? And most kids, sad to say, learn through pain. There is no such thing as go sit in the corner. We know that that doesn't work. Timeouts don't work. In fact, most of the research now show that timeouts are actually far worse for a child's psychological growth than just spanking the child, right? So fundamentally, you're causing pain in the short term in order to stave off ruin in the long term. That's the point of it. You're trying to save your child from a very bad future. Children need discipline. And spanking is one of the best ways to establish that discipline. Because I know as a child, my parents could talk to me as much as they wanted, I wouldn't care less. As soon as I got spanked, I very quickly realized, okay, wait, I'm never doing that again. Because it hurts when I do that. And I do agree with you there, Optimal Toast. The studies may say that spanking is really bad for a child's psychological development, but I can look at the world currently and say not spanking children appear to be very bad for society. I don't think even the most optimistic person out there cannot look at the world today and say everything is better today than what it was 20 years ago. You can't say that. The world is tearing itself apart, and at the heart of it is young people. Young people with no ability to know right from wrong, no ability to know their place in society. You have young people who so firmly believe that they are the saviors that the universe needs, that they say old people shouldn't be allowed to vote, right? Because we know better. That destroy artifacts of the history in the quest to destroy fossil fuels, that sit in the middle of a road and hold up traffic because they feel entitled enough to say stop using fossil fuels. But you're a kid. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. You should still be a kid. The problem is far too many adults when you were younger told you that you're a special little snowflake and that you can do whatever the hell you want because you are a unique little individual. And now you think that you are. That's the big problem. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it. I have to go because I still have to edit all of this and then get it uploaded. So yeah, we've gone a little bit longer than normal. Usually I would have ended it already, but we got into other conversations, so you know, didn't want to end the stream too early. I don't know yet if I'm going to be streaming today. I probably will, but don't hold me to it. I will definitely stream tomorrow, though. I will definitely stream tomorrow. There will be no Gaming Grifter tomorrow. Gaming Grifter is only from Mondays to Thursdays. There will still be videos on the channel, but I'll make those offline. They won't be made as part of the Gaming Grifter stuff, just because ordinarily I will have podcast on Fridays with Rurikon, which means I won't have time for Gaming Grifter. But we won't have podcast tomorrow. We will only have podcast on Saturday because it's the Games Awards stuff tomorrow, or tonight, actually. So yeah, but I'll let all of you know. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you so much for Prospect. Now it's way too late. It only starts at midnight, and I will already be asleep by then. So I will definitely not be streaming the Game Awards. I will be watching the Game Awards tomorrow morning. So that's what I'm going to be doing tomorrow morning, just watching it after the fact. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you so much for joining me on this wild ride that is the gaming news. I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you so much to each and every one of you. And as always, be good to each other, be kind to each other, enjoy your day, and I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.